evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the live broadcast of your favorite national program, National Matters, right here on Camnet Television. Camnet, not just another channel. Now, today, Zambia is commemorating, is observing the Heroes and Unity Day, though this day seems to be a little bit in the quiet side of things. Reason being that the COVID-19 has made us not go on the streets and celebrate this very important national day where we remember our heroes and, of course, reflect on issues affecting our country in terms of unity-wise. But however, as Camnet TV, we decided to bring to you this discussion we've entitled Heroes and Unity Day, just to discuss about issues pertaining to the unity of our country and our heroes that have done one or two issues for our country. Now, to help me discuss this particular topic, there is no other than somebody who doesn't require a lot of introduction, but for the sake of those that do not know him, veteran politician and diplomat, Honorable Akashamba Twambikusta Lewanika. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. I've never regarded myself as a politician, by the way. I'm a revolutionary who happened to go into politics as a field of struggle for bringing democracy.
Right.
And hopefully I've done it diplomatically, but I've never been appointed to diplomatic post. But I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you very much. It's a great honor, and it's a great occasion for reflection.
Indeed. All right. Seated next to him is Kaseva Mashila Kaseva. Kaseva Mashila Kaseva also doesn't require a lot of introduction. I'm sure this is a very familiar face and, of course, a familiar figure. He's been in the media circles for quite some time, and, of course, is into political and news analysis. Kaseva, good evening.
Good evening, Carl.
You want to go to the barber shop? Or you don't want?
No, it's not for Heroes. You don't cut your hair on Heroes Day. So.
Oh, so on which, on Youth Day, you promise you're going to cut your hair on Youth Day?
No, it's Prisons Day.
Oh, Prisons Day, you cut your hair.
No, that's when you cut the prisoner's hair.
Mr. Aka, let's go into the thick of things. I mean, look, today we are commemorating Heroes and Unity Day. This day seems to be on a quieter side. Unfortunately, I've tried to check what our theme for this year is. Unfortunately, I can't find any. I don't know, maybe Kaseva, you've come across one?
No, I've only heard...
Well, then it means that you are free to choose. Why do you want somebody else to choose your theme? So
normally we have the theme that we go with as a nation.
Because normally you are dictated to. Now you are free. Please.
I don't know what has gone wrong. Why we don't have a theme? Because what are we looking at?
No, but you don't need guidance. You yourself, when you think of Heroes and Unity Day,
I mean, you may be right. Let me maybe ask.
Maybe let's say that the background that by coincidence, Heroes and Unity Day fall on the days that were Cecil Rhodes Day and Founders Day. Founder means the founder of Southern Rhodesia and Northern Rhodesia.
Now let's have it.
Then after independence, the same days were renamed as Heroes and Unity Day.
Right.
That itself gives some indication that there was perhaps dissatisfaction with the idea of naming a day after one person and naming a day after a person whose only relationship with the people here in this part of Africa was that he was leader of the British South Africa Company and a pathfinder for colonization of Southern and Central Africa. So there was objection to that. But I think there was a recognition that it should be depersonalized. So I think that's one of the the theme that must be carried over, whether it's official or unofficial. How to depersonalize the commemoration of Heroes Day, and how to detach or not restrict the unity of the nation to its colonial past. So the challenge really was to broaden the identification of which heroes and what heroic deeds to be commemorated, and also to broaden the nation building to include, I presume, the pre-European colonialism days and include the post-colonial days.
Right.
So I think that is basically what I assume those who found it fit soon after independence.
Right.
Change.
I'm trying to bring you to speed where we are trying to find the theme for this year's commemoration. So I wanted to ask you, do you have any theme in mind? Because you said they've left it open for us.
Well, one, I don't even look for anybody to tell me what theme it is. If you say it's Africa Day, in my own mind, I decide what to think about it and what to say about it and how I should commemorate it. If somebody else has their theme, I decide whether I agree with it or don't agree with it.
How do you commemorate heroes?
I think that I look at the fact that the day exists, the fact that you have invited me on this particular topic as an opportunity to review the history of the country, the aspiration we have for the country, and what deeds and what individuals merit being remembered as heroes.
Let's start from there. Let's look at the history of this particular day and the significance of it.
Well, I think it is important for any people to remember their past, and it is psychologically good to remember your past, taking flag posts from heroic events and heroic individuals who have contributed to that country. I think the challenge which was opened up by changing the day from a day named after one individual was the challenge of broadening the catchment, the individuals caught up or remembered, and use that memory not just for listing them, but for strengthening our knowledge and inspiring us to build a better future. Following, because one of the themes, people are heroic because they do memorable things, they do commendable things, they do things that you'd like to build upon. They are pathfinders and door openers to the future. So if we should use any day like this for that at any time, regardless of whether there is an official theme or not.
So, how significant is this particular day, and whether we are observing it rightly or not?
Yeah, I think from the background he has given, the other year I was in Ghana, and part of the argument was whether it is Founders Day with an apostrophe S or Founders Day with the S and the apostrophe.
Right.
Whether it was the Kwame Nkrumah alone as a founder, or Kwame Nkrumah with the other freedom fighters as founders.
Right.
Here, it is mainly a day of the trade fair. That's what we have known about this day of the 15 or so holidays, and a couple of them that have just been created. I think the one for prayer, and then we had Youth Day just brought about. So far, we have this holiday known mainly as a trade fair holiday, and I suppose you recall it as a 4 days holiday from your school days that you could you could have some time to go back home. So the issue of the actual meanings and the actual heroes and what really gets to be the definition and who qualifies has not been properly given. We have had issues of Heroes Stadium, which is named after specific heroes, and I think there is also the Nationalist Road by UTH,
Right.
in front of UTH, which should have been, I think, some of those are also specific heroes that should have been named by names, which has also not been highlighted or celebrated or sung, as in relation to this day. We have the two roundabouts, the Kawe roundabout and the Kafue roundabout. I think one is supposed to be, the Kawe one is supposed to be heroes, and the Kafue one is supposed to be unity. And nothing of that is said. When you get to see the president speaking of values and principles and so on, he doesn't bring about this into context. I don't know if you've heard him. So it's neither here nor there.
How do you want him to bring into context the issue of bringing it about?
Oh, I think like he does with the other holidays. For example, he lead people on Africa Freedom Day, the laying of wreaths, and is going to give us the theme. They give us the definitions of these things, and then they give the honors and the awards and recognitions, which it doesn't happen on this day. I've just got on his Facebook page. I think he quoted Mandela about heroes and legacies, and I said, bring it to context. Bring it down here. Can you be our hero? You know, tell us about all these foreign heroes. This is our national day. There's a Mandela Day, you know that, 18th July, which is just a few weeks ahead of us. And the president is celebrating Mandela. And that is what he's going to use. And as you said, I'm trying to check. I was waiting for him. What is his address? What is he telling us as a country? So the president has said nothing. So the issues of the Ministry of Religious Affairs and National Guidance has not guided us on this and the importance of this, and also widening, as you heard me joke with him before the program about widening who really fits into this the definition of being heroes. Right now, you find you have to be a politician, you have to be a certain age, you have to be in government. For example, you have a time where Kaunda was not a hero for about 10 years of Chiluba, and Chiluba himself could not be a hero before Kaunda. Before he became president, and after he lost the presidency. So the context is really not provided of the 15 or so holidays. This is one of the most low-key. It's more for secondary school, and which also doesn't have all these awards.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think, you see, if you invite people to tell you what the day is about, you're also inviting you to lead you. You're also inviting you yourself to be misled. So silence is even better, because then you can decide what to do about this day, what to think about it, what to say about it.
You've seen it all. You've seen it all, and we want to learn from you.
Well, as you have said,
when we look at
because it coincided with the trade fair weekend, the trade fair event, it got associated with it, but the two were always separate. So the trade fair was always opened by the president.
Right.
So it also gave the president an opportunity to make a national address,
right,
in which he could or he could not cover.
And he has not done that this time around.
Because there's no trade fair.
Because there's no trade fair, definitely.
Yeah. So that.
But now we've tried to take it upon ourselves to see how best we can educate ourselves with regard to our heroes.
Yeah, and you shouldn't cry over that. You should be very happy that you have space to define for yourself.
The more reason why we brought you here, so that you can help us to define this important.
So to me, the president and the state and the government can do whatever they do, but as a citizen, I also need my free space of mind as to what to think about things and what to do about it. I don't spend sleepless nights that nobody has dictated to me at all. I spend sleepless nights fearing that somebody is going to dictate about me. So to me, the day heroes, if you tell me it's a heroes day, you talk about Zambia. First and foremost, I think it is apart from associating with the trade fair, the discussions you normally have had about heroes tend to be predominantly about political heroes, and predominantly about heroes who are within the UNIP narrative. You know, there isn't too many heroes from the Congress days.
You've seen the way
there isn't.
Have you seen the way this panel is? These are probably the young generation, not from your time. So we balance it.
Fine. So that I think that the challenge is to broaden your focus to beyond the UNIP narrative, not to erase the UNIP narrative, but to understand that there was a world before UNIP, and there has been a world since UNIP. So it seems that even the post-UNIP government, maybe because they went through school under the UNIP narrative, they've been brainwashed to narrow history. Now, when they are looking for heroes, they are just looking for heroes within the UNIP era, because they were taught those are the heroes. But even that history of UNIP, if you are not careful, it can be further narrowed or needs to be investigated further. Even within the UNIP era, there may be other events, other activities, other personalities who are being ignored.
We joked one time with Kaseva. You're right. We said, you know, heroism or heroine or whatsoever cannot only be political. They can also be economic heroes.
Yes, yes. I think that is another area of broadening. When I say broadening the focus,
this is what
apart from broadening in terms of time and in terms of personalities, there's also need to broaden it in terms of sectors. President Kaunda used to talk about 5 areas of human endeavor. Are you too young to remember that? Political, social, economic, defense, and not only that, defense and security. So, so that is an indication of areas in which we should look for people who did heroic deeds, which is who were the pathfinders.
That's exactly where we are.
Who were the door openers?
We were establishing the
Who were the participants? What did they achieve? On which we can build a future on that. So that is also, so that with or without a theme, we are free to broaden our focus on that.
We are heading to that.
Yes.
From the political angle, though you've rightly said, every time we want to look at the political, we've done this to make Zambia be where it is today. But we can't run away from that fact, that it all started from the politics. For us to get our independence, we were heroes.
Are you sure? It's not historically correct. The trade union movement predates the political movement. The social welfare movement predates both of them. The traditional authorities' response to colonialism predates all of them. So it's not correct. If your politics is about the independence struggle from 1960 to 64, it is not correct that that's where it starts.
Which is the UNIP narrative.
Yeah, but you see why we brought you here, so that's what is in the minds of many.
Yeah.
That's what is in the minds of many. Now,
maybe the other question is to say, if you are looking for heroes, what heroic acts are you looking for? Because for there to be a hero, there must be an heroic act. Are these heroic acts economic, in the economic sector or in the other sectors? Are these heroic acts within a certain period or within another period of our history?
Right. We are focusing, number one, from the political aspect. Political social and economic. But before we get to these, we are asking you from the point of view whether indeed we are celebrating the people that have done a lot for this country or not. Who are our heroes in terms of politics? And are we really celebrating people that have done great stuff for this country?
Well, okay, the source of, for you to find out whether, basically you're talking about history, okay? So if you are looking at, if you want to start in politics alone, then you can decide how far to go. Whether if you go into the pre-colonial days, that in the advent of European colonialism, there was resistance, accommodation, a way to deal with that. And that the fact that we have survived them, it means that there must have been some heroic deeds to make us survive, because we could also have been wiped out under those challenges. So we have to look at pre-colonial history.
Right.
And we have to be very proud of African history before Europeans. The kingdoms that we had, how they were built, the challenges that they faced, how they were faced in. So those should not be ruled out of the areas in which you look for heroes. Then in the colonial period, there was a question of being conquered, being a protectorate, and the Africans who were being exposed to European education, to missionary education, and to European economic activities, formed welfare associations. For instance, in 1924, a welfare association was formed in Mwenzo with Mr. Donald Swale as leader or chairman of that. That was the first rural official. And I say official because even before that, there were many other unofficial ways which we are free to investigate and highlight when we identify them. That was the first rural one. The first urban one was the Livingstone Welfare Association. So that all those people who were with Mr. Suwale in Mwenzo, to me, our heroes because they are pathfinders.
Right.
They were building the foundation blocks. I should also say, even before that, as I've indicated, the traditional African system had to confront European onslaught, whatever versions. So they are also our heroes because that is the building block that made us survive. Then you had the urban, the first urban welfare association in Livingstone. All those who were there should be identified as part of our heroes. You had an attempt to start the African National Congress in 1933 at Kafue.
Now you are getting the history that we've been looking for.
At Kafue. It did not last, partly because it was not recognized. Then, as the mines were picking up, the workers, the proletariat, the African proletariat population was growing. And there was a question of their welfare. First, they had appointed people, elders from the African community, normally appointed on ethnic basis. Like they would have an elder for the Bembas, an elder for the Mwachusas, whatever it is on the Copper Belt. But that soon evolved into the start of the trade union labor movement. It later became trade union officially, much later. But then also the welfare societies, which had started in Mwenzo and Livingstone, spread in all the urban areas, in Kabwe, in Luansha, in Kitwe, and so on, to form that. So those who are involved in all those, we should recognize, we should do research and find who they are and recognize them as the builders. Then the European system itself, in the 1941, constituted the Northern Rhodesia African Representative Councils. at provincial levels.
I doubt if Kaseva understands what you're even
At
talking
provincial
about.
levels. Now, I think that those who were the leaders of those in the different provinces should not be forgotten among our heroes. And then this was also formed in a territorial African Representative Council,
Right.
with the provinces picking 2 people to be in it and so on. It is out of that that the Welfare Association itself, parallel to that, in 1946, the Quito Welfare Society proposed that the welfare societies should form a territorial union, the Northern Rhodesia Federation of African Welfare Societies, which was made in 1946. So all those people involved in this are your heroes. Then 2 years later, it was again resolved that this Federation of Welfare Societies should reconstitute itself into an overt political organization. This is the Northern Rhodesia African Congress,
Right.
which was founded in 1948. In 1952, it changed its name to the Northern Rhodesia African National Congress. It's important that the change of name of adding national
Yeah.
is not a break, because the first attempt in 1933 used the word national. And it was thought that that is what made it unacceptable to the authority. So in order to have a door opener, you dropped it, but you formed a Congress.
Right.
Congress itself was a dynamic word, because in 1912, the South African National Congress was formed as the South African National Native Congress, before they dropped native. So that it was a very progressive move to change to that. And it changed gears, because for the first time in 1948, we had the first overtly political organization. It was not about welfare, it was not about union. Parallel to that, the trade union movement now, in the same year, 1948, the first trade union movement, official trade union, was constituted. So all those people involved in the labor movement, in the welfare society movement, in the formation of
Are we able
Congress-
to trace all those people?
Well, that is, I can name some of them, but I just want to give you the framework.
I would love to.
Okay? So
Personally,
that
and
in
the
40,
people
I
out
want to come up to date,
Right.
so that you understand the timeline. That from 1948, then in 1952, as I say, it was changed. The name was dropped. Nation was inputted in it, so it became the African National Congress. And I should say that all these congresses in Northern Rhodesia, in Nyasaland, in Southern Rhodesia, even in Tanganyika, were like branches of the South African National Congress. And some of them were founded by people who had been there in South Africa at their founding, even though they were maybe from other countries like Nyasaland. So that now, from 1948 to 1958, this Northern Rhodesia African National Congress movement was intact. It was the sole political movement. Then in 1958, it split. The Zambia African National Congress broke away from the Northern Rhodesia African National Congress.
Right.
In 59, ZANC, as it was called, was banned, and its leaders were arrested. And at the end of 59, they were released. In fact, they were being released throughout, but the final leaders were released at the very end. So it's then at the end, in the beginning of January 1960, that is when what had been formed as the outgrowth of ZANC, the UNIP, was handed over to the leadership of President Kaunda in January 1960.
Okay.
So that now from 1960 to 62, there was a campaign first against the Federation and for a better constitution with more votes for voting space for Africans. And in 1962, under a more expanded under a more expanded voting list with more Africans, an election was held. But it was a stalemate. And because it was a stalemate, the UNIP, which was basically a breakaway from Congress, and the Congress from which it broke, decided to constitute a coalition government, which now ushered in for the first time a cabinet with a majority of black Africans, indigenous Africans, from 1962 to 63, end of 63, the federation ended. In January 64, another election was built, this time on an even more democratic basis, with a majority of black voters. That election led to UNIP being able to have a commanding majority without having a coalition government. That is in January. So between January and May 1964.
How have you managed to keep all that history in your mind? I'm just wondering, sitting
I read every day. I read every day.
Somebody came and told me that I passed through Mr. Leonika's house, and he's got a library like from here to there. And
yeah, anyway, let me continue. Forget the Aka's library. So for this critical 5 months from January to March, that's when the negotiations were made for Zambia's independence and concluded. So that in January, a Zambia independence bill in the British Parliament was passed. So and that constituted the first constitution of Zambia. The Zambian constitution was not made in the Zambian parliament at that beginning. But it was a result of negotiation. We can go into those details. But what's important is that this is basically the background. And one of the key parts of the Zambian independence constitution, and beyond that, the Zambian independence dispensation, I always distinguish because beyond what was in that constitution in January, it was only possible to have it because first they had to sort out the Barotseland question. So before the Northern Rhodesia independence discussion could be concluded, they had to sort out the Barotseland question. And the sorting out was the Barotseland Agreement. So the Barotseland Agreement is an integral part of the Zambia independence dispensation beyond the Zambian independence constitution. And this dispensation, one, guaranteed that Zambia will be a multi-party government. Two, that the opposition party will be recognized in parliament and basically to be an honorable participant in the governance of the country. Two, the Europeans who were concerned about whether or not if they remain in Northern Rhodesia when it goes under a black government, they will be thrown to the sea, or there will be racial reverse racism, or their property will be grabbed, were also assured. Barotseland was also assured that you can be part of this new Zambia, but on the condition of the Barotseland Agreement. The African National Congress was comforted that you can be part of this new Zambia. Because even though you are an opposition, and the Congress became an opposition, a minority party in January 64, because there will be room for opposition, there will be respect for the opposition. So all these, I think I have said in the last few days, I've been saying it too much, but you can't say it enough because this is the key. So all this was a product of compromise between the majority party, UNIP, the minority party, Congress, the representative of European settlers who were comfortable to continue in Zambia as Zambians, and also Barotseland. Okay? Now, it was suspected that just agreeing is not enough. That how are you sure that this agreement will be honored? Now, they agreed that in order to make sure of that there would be a referendum clause, a clause which said no part of the Constitution, not even a comma, can be changed except if the proposal is put to a referendum and accepted and supported by a majority of eligible voters. You know, the eligible voters are more than the registered voters, because some eligible voters don't register.
Right.
Okay? And the registered voters are always more than the voting voters. So it means that you did not just need to win the support of those who voted, you also needed to win the support of all those who registered, even if they didn't vote. You also needed to vote all those who are eligible to vote, even if they did not register and they did not register. Now, this was a big hurdle that really, for a proposal to get support like that, it had to be a win-win proposal in which everybody feels comfortable with. Unfortunately, the history of Zambia is that 4 years after independence, a referendum was held to withdraw that security of a referendum. And this licensed Zambia to now regress politically, regress democratically, by allowing the ruling party, through its majority in parliament, to be able to change almost any part of the constitution that it pleases for its own purpose. In other words, constitutional proposals, proposals for changing the constitution, no longer required to be a win-win outcome. It did not matter if some were aggrieved as long as they were a minority.
Right.
It did not matter if this was just for personal interest or partisan interest or against some other people.
I can see you're passionately talking about...
So, yes. But you see, it's an evolution. So that what you see is that after independence, there was regression. All the way up to independence, the democratic movement was building up to more and more people being able to vote, one man, one vote, and universal suffrage, right up to independence. Then after independence, you start making constitutional changes which undermine that right to vote. Because in the end, using this blanket check...
So I was coming to that to say, it seems the issue of the constitution started way back, isn't it? Because even today we're still talking about the constitution.
Because the constitution, and to discuss the constitution of Zambia now, you cannot do it without discussing how it was constituted in the first place.
How was it constituted?
It was constituted as a product of negotiation of recognized different stakeholders with different concerns, with different interests, and different...
How many stakeholders are these? How many were they involved?
Well, I've already indicated to you that the general one is that after the general election in parliament, you had a party which had a majority. That became an interest group. You had a party that was a minority. You had a party which was led by Europeans, although obviously they wouldn't agree if we say they were representing European interests, but basically it was understood that their concerns was with Europeans. Then there was the question of Barroso. So basically at the core you had 4 stakeholding groupings which agreed in the Zambian dispensation. But after independence, the party which was a majority decided to abuse its majoritism to destroy that balance, that negotiating, that compromise package. And that was the beginning of the downhill process of the Zambia.
All right.
The reason I was giving you this background is that within this stream, if you are looking for heroes, you have the heroes.
Remember I asked you a question that
you have the heroes
from what the stream that you've given us, which are some of who are some of the heroes you may identify to our viewers out there? This program is basically with history. So
unfortunately,
don't be bold.
Unfortunately, I can't mention them all. So you excuse me. I'll just mention that. I think that.
So I'll be coming back to you shortly.
I think that the leaders of our traditional authorities are among our heroes. All our kings were among our heroes. Because I will jump forward, that at the time of independence, our traditional leaders had kept 96.4% of our land under native authorities. And whoever gives you land, there's no other bigger present they can give. So our traditional leaders are our biggest heroes, because despite the threat of a more powerful forces, from global forces, they still managed one way or the other to retain land in the hands of Africans. That is heroes number one. I can't count them all, because among them there were some who resisted militarily because they had been invaded. You have Mpeze and Nsingo, his brother.
So you are saying even some of the Europeans that were part and parcel of this nation are also our heroes.
I'll come to that. So that now I've mentioned the Welfare Association. In the Mwezo Welfare Association, it was headed by Donald Swale and 6 or 7 others, including Dr. Kaunda's father, David Kaunda. So all those 6, plus their members, because the majority did not have official position, which is the misfortune of history, that those with offices will be remembered, but those with offices have been put there by people who are nameless. So all those, if we can capture them, are our heroes. So from 624, I would say those are our heroes, including Donald Swale and David Kaunda. In 28-29, when the Livingstone Welfare Association was founded, the chairman was a Mr. Nyirenda, who happened to be from Nyasaland at that time. The Secretary General was my father, Mbiku Sitaliwanika, who at the age of 24 became the founder secretary of that. You had Mr. Nelson Nalumango. You had other people. This one I didn't want to name them because I really don't want to forget them. But it was a group of at least 10 people.
Right.
Leading the first welfare.
Okay.
Then when the welfare association were being brought in towns, you had like Mr. Yumba, Doubt Yumba, who was in the welfare movement both in Kabwe and also founded the Luansha one. Again, my father pops up.
Those are quite a huge list.
Yes.
It's quite a huge list.
But I think let me name a few of them, because I'm not naming them all. Then you had the Kitwe Welfare Association. You know, in fact, it was the Kitwe Society, African Society, founded in 44. And it's the one that passed the resolution. That again was under the chairmanship of my father. But Mr. Harry Nkumbula was a member, although not an office bearer. Mr. Kapwepu was a member, although not an office bearer. You had other members who were office builders, office holders there. Then when the Welfare Association federated, Mr. Doubt Yamba, who had been in Kabwe and Luansha, became the president of that. His vice president was Mr. Mufayam, not Mufayamu Mbuna, but Mufana.
One thing that I'm just shocked is how
Mufana, and so on. Then in 48, this was transformed to a political organization. Then my father became the founder president of the first political organization in Zambia, in Northern Rhodesia, as President General. His vice president was Mr. Doubt Yamba. His secretary was Mr. Nabuliato, and other members who I know their names, but there are too many, I won't mention.
Right.
So that then when Mr. Harry Nkumbula came back from studies, he wasn't there when Congress was founded, he was in London. He took over at the end of 51 and led the same unified movement up to 1958. Then President Kaunda comes in as Secretary General in 1953. After that. Then within the middle of the 50s, other people had gone to school. By the way, my father in 1950 went to India and founded scholarships. Among those who gained from those scholarships was Mr. Kapwepwe, Mr. Mundia, Mr. Lisulo, and all the people who got government scholarships from India up to date.
Let me hold you
so
a little
I'm saying
bit.
that those who came became some of the forces that now founded ZANC.
Right.
So those also should not be forgotten.
They should be remembered.
Yes.
But Kaseba, quite a huge list of people that we don't even talk about. We don't even
And
mention
this
them.
is just in politics.
In politics.
We are not
we've
talking
yet touched
about
the economy.
teachers. We are not talking about teachers. We are not talking about religious leaders. We are not talking about traditional authorities.
Could there be a way that we can sit and put whatever that we are saying here, as you come up probably with a list of these people? Because I've not even seen...
Not me come. If I have any message at my age for young people to read, please read. Don't form opinions based on what you just hear without double checking the sources. Read your history. Fortunately, none of this which I'm saying is hidden actually. It's only hidden to those who don't bother to open books. Now you are lucky, those the younger generation, there is Google. You can even just Google Donald Swale. Google the Welfare Association at Mweso. I'm sure somewhere you'll find the details of all the names.
Even if they are not complete, but at least you'll find
No,
sketches.
Google will give you a fairly complete... But I also must caution that Google is not an educational tool, because anybody can put in all sorts of information in Google. So don't leave your education to Google.
But this is what I'm saying.
Use
It may not
Google
be
as a
accurate, but
guideline.
yes.
Then read beyond that.
Right.
Fortunately, most submissions
Let me allow Kaseba also just to push
would
it.
have a list of bibliography.
Yeah.
So you go to those bibliographies.
Okay, Kaseba. This is basically, we are looking at the history of this country. And of course, in terms of our heroes, it's given us a good background.
Yeah, I think from where he's started from, I think you noted the age he gave for his father at the time. And I like to, can I say, do battle or tease him, that when the founding youth, his father was a youth when they started this, they were not founding fathers. They were very futuristic. They were looking forward. That is the difference. So we have never taken that one, they were youths. Kaunda himself, I think, was 24 when at the founding of our Congress in 1948. So that is never put in that perspective, that these people were futuristic.
Right.
Now that the future has arrived, we still need to look to the future. What has been happening is that we have limited heroes to the past. And one of the things, again, I think as he brought about the heroes and nationalism and so on, I think we have kind of dropped nationalism. Even Pan-Africanism has been lost. We are still singing the national anthem that comes from that time, but we do not want to recognize the values that have been put there from that time. He has talked before this program of a program about group leadership. We have lost that. So the group that we have individuals now, as opposed to the group, and the group that is recognized is more the political group.
Right.
I have this extensive list from the Jubilee, which has about, 3,000 or so. The lists, I mean, you'll not find a name like, can I say, Joey Mwinga? You'll not find a name like Patus Moko. You'll not find a name like Francis Kassom. These are journalists. These have contributed to the nation. You won't find Stephen Impashi, I don't know. Maybe he will tell me that the list before that would have. So you will not find that category. Media people have basically been ignored. So what you get to see is that there has been a
So you mean all those are also part of the heroes?
I mean, would you want to have Fred Membe recognized, for example, as part of the media? Hasn't he contributed something 20, 25 years? Or even Aka himself. He's not in this book. For his contribution to multi-party reintroduction, he doesn't belong.
We shall write another book soon.
Yeah, but he's written
Where we
books,
shall
but
include him.
it's the other people to recognize him, to sing about him. I have some speeches. I think Dr. Kaunda, speaking at MISA in '98, spoke about the issue of
You have that speech?
Yeah, not singing about our heroes. And then you had, I think it's It should be around within.
I've seen some of the documents.
Just like Rupiah Banda, just last year. Yeah, this is the Rupiah Banda speech. Just last year, I think you had Rupiah Banda deliver the memorial lecture on Chiluba. And interestingly, it's Rupiah Banda who's going to say, Zambia, a land of unsung heroes. I thought it should be you complaining that we are not being sung. But Rupiah Banda, as a former president, is going to talk about or complain about Chiluba not being sung as a hero. The same we have with Kaunda, the other speech I've just referred to. He too is complaining about our heroes not being sung. And from what Comrade Aka is just from talking about, I would not think Kaunda would be any of those people, or Rupiah Banda could be any of those people who can really complain about our heroes not being sung. Now, the point is that how do we sing and recognize heroes? And how would they have wanted us to sing and recognize heroes? They have, so to speak, recognized themselves, and I think we have sang them. And if you look at our national anthem, as in terms of
Kasiba, I sort of to understand, and the viewers out there, for instance, who's supposed to recognize Fred Membe? Should it be?
Well, I think
who's supposed to recognize him?
It's a national day and it's a national holiday. It's the people that have taken that upon themselves to recognize. It's the same standard they are using.
To consciously broaden the sectors to start with. That helps you to make sure that you don't miss any.
The sector of people who have contributed.
The sectors. Is it media? Is it
sports, entertainment?
Sports? Is it art and culture?
Correct.
Is it the educational sector?
Yeah.
In other words, once you broaden it so that it's not just a narrow view of
politics,
the politics, and also even the politics, that it's not a selective history where others are left out, others are put in, where you may even recognize somebody who was deputy to someone but don't recognize the holder of the substantive post. But I think the point that's important is not really singing about heroes, is what is the purpose. I think that the purpose of commemorating history, the heroes assist you to remember, because if you remember names, it concretizes the historical experience. But the purpose is to identify what is the aspiration of the African people.
Right.
How far have we gone in fulfilling that? If other people have assisted building and you recognize them as heroes, then the challenge is that now those of us who are after that, what are we doing to build upon what they've left? So the purpose must be African freedom in its broadest sense. You talked about Pan-Africanism. That's another story of history being slightly hijacked. Because when the Pan-African movement started, you can't even say it started, because the minute there was resistance, 400, 500 years, it was there. But in 1990, now it was formally put, there were conferences, African, Pan-African Conference number 1, 2, 3, up to 45. Up to 45, the resolutions they were passing was to help the freedom of Africa, but indigenous Africa. But after 45, the leadership that came out of the 45 Manchester Conference, the Nkrumahs, the Kenyattas, Ono Rose in Nigeria and so on, surrendered to the colonial contraptions of nations. So the African nationalism that starts in 1945 is not nationalism based on nation or focused on nations that are indigenous in Africa. It's the nationalism that accepts the colonial contraptions of nation. And this is why even when the African Union is formed, among its top 3 articles, founding articles, is the recognition of colonial boundaries. And more Africans have died to defend those colonial boundaries than anything else. We were celebrating the independence of 60th anniversary of the independence of the Congo. That is the tragedy. Leopold said he formed a plantation from the Atlantic to Lake Tanganyika, from Angola to Sudan, and called it the Congo whatever. Now for 60 years, Africans have been killing themselves in defense of Leopold's arbitrarily drawn lines, which created a country which is basically unmanageable anyway.
Right. Okay. He had
We also have the same problem.
Right. I'll be getting back to you. He had some unfinished thoughts.
Yeah, I was actually getting to the national anthem, which, as I was talking about how to observe, and I was talking about singing. I think singing does not literally mean the actual act of singing. It is more of recognition.
Right.
And what I wanted to make reference to, I think, which goes with what he initially said about African National Congress, of which national anthem tune we've lifted, is that when you get to sing our national anthem as one of such articles of our own recognition, you'll find that we tend to sing, and one of the commonest words, I think about 5% of the national anthem, is more like you're chanting Zambia, Zambia, Zambia. The next is you want to say praise, 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 praise. Now, you don't get to see the heroes. Of course, we say victors and the free men we stand and so on. But to really recognize this as an act of, as a heroic act, that does not necessarily come out through the national anthem, as in recognizing the people that have delivered that, and also the values, as he has just from touching on. Our national anthem doesn't necessarily carry that, or you do not get to see our system recognize that or use that as a way of singing or recognizing heroes and heroism. So that is one area which I think should have been a consistent line from the time that we started to this time. Our national anthem should have been assisting us in celebrating ourselves and celebrating our values, which it is not. And I think until recently, it was never recognized that doing it on a brass band and never putting words to it, we were actually losing it. And then until recently, that is when we said, let's also not just do two verses. I think you have heard part of the talk that has been made, that we are doing two verses when we have four, and we have forgotten the other.
Right.
So that is part of the same way we are forgetting the meaning of this day, is the same way that we had forgotten the issue of the national anthem.
You think we've forgotten about the meaning of this?
Yes, we have forgotten. Just like I think we have belabored heroism or heroes, and have forgotten about what he said, nationalism. Today we are arguing about patriotism or patriotic front. There is no nationalism in what you would call patriotic front. None of that. There is no nationalism. They are busy dividing. This country has no regions. It has provinces. But you keep hearing them talking about regions. The president was just in the other side of the country, where he should have been building deep tanks. He is building all this, taking the law and the government and so on, as opposed to, we just had an outbreak of stock diseases from last year to this year. We are not taking deep tanks. We are taking the police and prison to imprison people, as opposed to saving their animals or their livestock, as an act of national building, as to say we are building this region as well.
So, from what he's saying, it brings us the issue of the unit of this country. You know.
Yeah, take off from, he's talking about singing the national anthem. I've less quarrel about the words sung in the national anthem. My real fundamental quarrel is that it's a lie. See, we are not free men. We don't stand. We are not strong. We are not one. In other words, if somebody sings that national anthem,
you mean you're not
and
comfortable
then
with the Constitution itself?
Passes a constitutional amendment which he knows is divisive, he cannot believe in those words. If Parliament can continue mutilating the Zambian constitution for personal and partisan reasons. It means they don't believe in the word. And no wonder even you are saying if the citizens also are forgetting the national anthem itself forgot them a long time ago. Because it's not meaningful. It's not honestly reflective of Zambia. Yes, you can say it as an aspiration. That will be understand. But then there must be some activity that shows that you are moving towards your aspiration, not away from your aspiration. So that, you see, beyond singing the national anthem, check whether it is true. In fact, for the last many years, each time I'm cornered to be present when the national anthem is being sung, I really think word for word, line by line, and check, is this true? I say it's a lie. Is this true? It's a lie. Is this true? It's a lie.
Let me try.
So that, you see, in other words...
Which words are you not comfortable with?
Oh, sing. Okay, you sing the first one. What is the first line?
Stand and sing of Zambia, proud and free.
Are we free?
From what?
Yeah, exactly. From what are we free?
Yeah, for me, it's a stand and sing of Zambia.
Proud and free. No, the assumption is that Zambia is proud and free. Land of work and joy.
Proud and free from the colonial masters.
When did the colonial masters leave? These IMF, who are they? You want Churchill to come? He's well represented. Who is managing our economy? Who are we inviting to invest? Who sets the rules of how we manage the economy? Who gives us awards for following their economic policies? Suddenly they say you are now HIPIC, you have completed HIPIC. 5-10 years later, you are again in debt. To the same people you are supposed to be free from. So that I think, as I say, I don't mind us aspiring high, but I would like to see that those who aspire high are moving towards that height, not talking about your aspiration and then doing the reverse.
Yeah, I think I also wanted to bring in the point that from the national anthem, I would have also loved us to factor in the new heroes. For example, the issue of coronavirus. Have you heard the system honoring any of the so-called frontline people? It's happening in other countries. There hasn't been any form of recognition.
The president keeps recognizing him in all his statements that he makes.
Yeah, but have you seen individuals being named, researchers being named, or all these people that are on the front line and even dying? You don't get any of those are named. The same way we have had the issue of Black Lives Matter from. Have you heard anybody talk about this Frank Mugala? Have you heard anybody talk about Mapenzi Chibulo? Or we have been talking about the issue of...
How are they heroes, Frank Mugala?
Well, I think the point of paying the ultimate price. How is Freud... I don't want also to talk about Freud as here in Zambia. The same way I don't want the president to talk about Mandela. But the point is, how are we recognizing our own? Okay? How are we recognizing Christian Mulumbiga, for example, for the Public Order Act, or even ACA here? How are we recognizing for the multi-party that we have had for the last 28 years? We had UNIP for 27 years and 17 years of UNIP alone. Now we have had multi-party. The PF actually came in and started recognizing the Choma Declaration. And and then everyone was saying how proud they are of the one-party state. So the point of how we are recognizing and getting across sectors, and not what is right now happening is that there is the issue of hero killing and giant killing, and the system, the same like what has happened to the Post, where the system just feels jealousy. If you heard the president mock the youth that went to the bush, because they are afraid of the streets. You can imagine they are not afraid of animals, they are afraid of the streets, and they go to the bush and make an address or a protest.
So it seems to be charging towards the end of the program. This is why we are right that we needed 2 days just to segment this discussion. We were supposed to discuss heroes, as we've tried actually today. Just to
By
discuss.
the way, UNIP was founded in the bush, in Mulungush.
So there's no difference between the youths who are protesting in the bush also.
Yeah, but UNIP was not, just like there's no difference with
So we need to go. And
I suspect for the same reason.
I suspect too, right?
No, I think UNIP was more sanctioned
All right.
than
we
the way
need to
the
go.
youths were.
We need to go. I think we've discussed. I know it could have been very boring to others, but we wanted to go deep into history, and of course, that's where we are coming from. Then tomorrow we are supposed to be discussing unity as a topic. Today we're only discussing heroes as a discussion, and but we'll see how it goes. But however, let me give you an opportunity for your closing remarks. And
No, we can't close the discussion. The discussion closed. If I had only one message, and it's to young people, please read, and read critically. Don't form opinions over matters you have not read properly. Most of you are sufficiently educated to be able to read and get your knowledge from.
No, you are right. We are all victims, actually. Kaseva, especially this generation.
Yeah, I think for me is that heroes are not limited to one sector and to one generation. There are heroes happening right now, and this should have been acknowledged every year. And for this year, I think I would want to recognize the youths that went to the bush and to social media. And the one I'm just from talking about, Frank Mugala. Also, Mrs. Mulundika. I think Mrs. Mulundika has not been well for some time. And as we battle the issues of the Public Order Act, I think we also need to acknowledge the person who has her name alongside that battle.
Right.
Well, I think the recognition also for ACA, for what we have, I think, well, I've shown you, this is a very thick book, and his name misses. I wouldn't mind yours missing. But, we need to put these matters in perspective.
Right.
Thank you very much.
We need to go. Thank you so much. That's what we had for you on this edition of National Matters on Kamne Television. And of course, my guests were Akashambara Bikusta Lewanika, veteran politician, and of course, Kaseva Mashiwaka, though he doesn't want to say that he's a politician.
No, I'm not. That would be as dishonest
No,
as the national anthem.
So what do you want to be called?
I'm Aka, and I'm a Democrat advocate and a freedom fighter.
So you've heard it for yourself, a freedom fighter, and of course, Kaseva Mashila, Kaseva, political and news analyst. My name has been Kala Nchma. We are discussing Heroes in Unity Day, which falls today, 6th and 7th, which is tomorrow. Good night, and God bless you.